and welcome back to Who's in Your Cloud, 21 Steps to Secure, Reliable, Trusted Technology. And thank you for joining us today. I'm Lauren Lev, Marketing Manager for TechOnPurpose and the most entertaining host of our vlog series. Today, we'll be discussing Cloud SaaS Backup and how this solution helps guard your SaaS application's data from threats such as ransomware or accidental deletion, and what solutions are available to you to avoid a devastating data loss. Last week, we had one of our best episodes yet, focusing on email and phishing protection. View all of our episodes of this series on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, or Spotify, and sign up for our blog at techonpurpose.net/blog to get all episodes delivered straight to your inbox. Today's episode brings us halfway through our series and through our cybersecurity best practices matrix. Matt, can you believe it? Like halfway, it's been crazy.
Man, it's been quite a journey, and hopefully the next half will be even better for everybody. So
absolutely. All right. Well, on deck for today is top Cyber 21 practice number 10, Cloud SaaS Backup. We'll be discussing its importance, associated risks, and solutions. Datto is joining us today, and we'll hear about how their solutions ensure protection, regulatory compliance, and improved data visibility for your cloud application data. If you're like me back in the day, you know what the sheer horror and regret feels like when you realize that you just ejected that floppy disk before saving the final copy of your term paper hours before it was due. I'm very guilty. There was a lot of tears that day. Fast forward to a few years and having my iPhone stolen and not having a recent backup. You've never seen a meltdown until you've witnessed a 16-year-old at the Geek Squad counter being told there's nothing that they can do since your latest device backup was from over a year ago. I was so guilty and I paid the price. So apparently I'm a really slow learner, but I finally got it, mostly thanks to automated backups. But myself and backup technology has caught up with the times. Today, we're going to discuss how SaaS backup solutions help guard your SaaS application's data from threats such as ransomware or accidental deletion. Before we get into all of that, let's meet our cast for today. We have a VIP cast member joining us, which is Vice President of Global Security Sales from ConnectWise, Jay Ryerson. It's been so long since you've joined us on the blog, but we're happy to have you back.
Oh, thanks, Lauren. I'm very excited to be here and to spend some time with Jason and Matt as well, but you are the hostess with the mostest. So
I like to think so.
I'm really glad to be here today.
Thanks, Jay. All right, we have another cast member joining us today from Datto. It is their Channel Development Manager, Jason Price. Jason, thanks for coming. We're happy to have you.
No, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be on the panel with such esteemed people. You definitely took my what I had planned to say with the hostess with the mostest. So I'm sure I'll come up with something better than that, before the end of this blog happens. So
good. I look forward to it. I like all this, positive affirmation. It's great for my ego.
I love it. I love it.
All right. And we have, of course, TechOnPurpose's founder and CEO, Matt Tankersley. All right, Matt, take it away. What does our audience need to know right out the gate about Cloud SaaS Backup?
Well, welcome back, everybody. And again, Happy New Year if you haven't heard that enough times from enough people. But we're a smaller cast today. A lot of people traveling this week, and we're honored to have everybody here from ConnectWise and Datto as well, two of our more strategic partners and all of what we do, and in particular, cybersecurity related to Cloud SaaS Backup. So I think it'll be a quick episode today for those listeners who are used to the 2x speed playback of our 40 and 50-minute episodes. Maybe this one will move a little quicker for you. Let's set the stage with a few statistics I think that hit home on this best practice, and then Lauren, let's, in usual fashion, let's pass it around the room and learn more about our two guests, at least for the audience that don't know them and the companies that they represent. And then we'll jump into our usual round of conversation about what's the issue that dictates warrants a need for SaaS cloud backup. And then we'll kick it back and hear about some specific solutions, in particular from our friends at Datto today. So thanks for being here, guys. All right, so some stats. 47% of users reported that data in their SaaS applications is somewhat important, but 42% said it's critical to their day-to-day operations. So I'm not sure where our viewing audience is on that front, but I know that we can't do anything without our cloud today. And my guess is a vast majority of our data is certainly critical to us and probably to most of our clients. It looks like 30% of people have never backed up files to a separate location other than their computer, which is an interesting problem. So what happens if that computer is lost, stolen, damaged, or compromised? That's a problem, right? I see that we actually now have a day dedicated to this. World Backup Day is March 31st. And that's the global marketplace basically saying this is so important. We need to at least make sure that folks are hearing about it from all of us at least one day a year, why this is needed, why it's so important, and how to easily get underway. And so, listen, losing your personal data, Lauren, you talked about that early on, that's bad enough. Losing your business data stored in your online tools can result in costly and timely delays that ultimately devastate your business, right? This is bad stuff. So all of it can be prevented by simply utilizing the many cloud SaaS backup solutions that are in the marketplace. And so let's not take my word for that. And let's hear from our cast today. Lauren, let's get everybody introduced and learn a little bit more about it.
Perfect. Happy to. All right. So we'll have both of you introduce yourself and tell us more about your background in your company before moving on to roundtable question number 1. We'll get more into it. Okay. So Jay, as our VIP cast member, you're up first. Tell us about yourself and your role at ConnectWise.
Sure. Thanks, Lauren. So I am VP of Global Security Sales. So I manage our teams that work with our partners in the community on solving for cybersecurity issues, of which backups, ability to respond and recover are part of them. ConnectWise is the world's leading software company dedicated to the success of IT solution providers. And we provide solutions that Matt and Lauren and their team use to help deliver services efficiently and effectively to their clients, because there's not enough of us to go around humans, so we've got to throw some technology at it. My background comes from working with small businesses on cybersecurity related issues. I've worked my way up and into this global role that I have today. Really just helping solve the challenges that our partners and their clients are facing when it comes to all things cybersecurity. I am a CISSP, so I'm a Certified Information Systems Security Professional, which you don't usually find on the sales side of conversation. So I tend to bring a certain amount of levity to the conversation to help make sure we're thinking about the right things and not just throwing products at problems when there are better solutions than just technology, which we sort of see with backups in this world. Now, when we talk about SaaS, let's make sure we all know what that is, right? That's software as a service. And in this case, it's how you deliver backups into the cloud as a service that you guys get. So not everybody knows what that means and where it fits in the conversation. And I guess I'm going to, rather than open up with a fun conversation, I'm going to do what I like to do, which is I'm going to go dark for a moment. I'll tell you guys about a law firm in the Atlanta area that was hit by a cyber attack on the Friday night before Christmas back in 2016. So I'm going back a little bit, but the story is relevant. The attackers, we found out afterwards, had been in the network for over 300 days. When they finally decided it was time to launch their ransomware attack, this law firm didn't have the right protections in place, and their on-site backups had been compromised, meaning the attackers got the admin password for the network and they were able to log into the backup systems. And if you're all technical, this is going to make you cringe. They literally went into the backup routines, they unchecked all the data folders. So they're only backing up the routine Windows files. The ones you get on CD when you buy a new computer, right? Nothing more than that. And nobody noticed. No triggers, no alarms, no, hey, someone checking these. Nobody was testing the backups for restore capability on a regular basis. Just a lot of things went wrong in their processes that allowed the attackers to literally wait 91 days from when they made that change, because they only had a 90-day retention period on the backups. Mm-hmm. So they're only keeping 90 days. So on day 91, they knew that the IT team had not figured out there was a problem. they were able to launch their attack. They encrypted 89 of the 140 workstations and 43 servers.
Wow.
There was no cloud backup. Nothing that was backed up previously ever went to the cloud. And basically, this law firm was forced for them to stay in the business to go ahead and pay the ransom payment. Now, it wasn't a pretty sight. Even once they got the key, it took weeks to get them back up and online, because the decryption process and then the cleaning process and rebuilding their network, it just takes so much more than you ever imagined. I'm sure you can picture, you're a lawyer, if you're an attorney, you can think about your office. What would happen if you had no computers and no data for weeks on end at the end of a year? What would that mean to your business? And look, it's not always that bad, right? You can say, well, Jay, I'm a 5-user, accounting firm, and we back up our QuickBooks to a USB drive. There's so much more that needs to go on in that conversation, which I think is why we're here today. And ultimately, from the CISSP side of me, look, your ability to recover is your ability to survive an attack.
Right.
And the attack could be a cyber attack. It could be hardware failure. It could be your cloud provider, some solution out there. There was one in Texas that happened a few years ago. They were hosting QuickBooks for 126,000 businesses. And they got hit by a cyber attack and they never recovered. So 126,000 businesses lost their QuickBooks files like that and had no idea why or how that could possibly happen. So backups are a critical part of all things we do in technology, but it really does start with having that plan and that approach in place. I think today's conversation might actually be the most important one of the 21 we're going to talk about. When you're thinking about 2022 and how you're going to really run your business going forward.
That's certainly more devastating than my floppy disk term paper fiasco.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit different. All right. So before we pass it over to Jason, let me say a couple of things. First off, I'm afraid you told that story and I cringed about the lost QuickBooks data. I actually think one of our clients was one of the people that was using that company, and they lost 3 years of QuickBooks data and spent the next 18 months rebuilding from receipts and hand copies of invoices their entire accounting system. It was an absolute nightmare. I can't imagine what the cost and the expense of that was.
Yeah, Matt, it's funny. We'll cover this, I'm sure, but I'll jump into it now. Knowing where your assets are one of the first things you have to assess when it comes to determining your backup system. Like,
right.
Hey, I've got my computers, but those cloud providers, and where are they backing up? How often? How would I recover? What is that going to look like to me? Is part of that risk assessment that every business needs to be doing on a regular basis, trying to understand what the impact would be to their business.
I agree. And let me give you guys 2 plugs real quickly, and then I want to hear from our friends at Datto, because we love this product as well. And so we actually use your Identify platform to do cyber risk assessments for our clients. We love that platform, and we encourage everybody from the beginning of this campaign to the end, visit who'sinyour.cloud, get your free risk assessment from TechOnPurpose, and it's the ConnectWise platform we use that enables us to do that. And we also use we've obviously talked about a lot of things. We're in episode 10 or 11 now, I think it is. We're going to talk about 10 or 11 more. A lot of the things in our portfolio come from your team. One of those is Perch SIEM, right? And we actually got a call, I think it was New Year's Eve, that we had a device that had been compromised by this Log4j thing. And here's the good news. All of our cyber portfolio stack that we have implemented did everything it could to protect that, and nothing was affected other than that device got compromised, but it couldn't get to anything. It couldn't do anything. It couldn't execute anything. But based on that great product from your team, we were able to quickly identify that, isolate that, recreate that server in a more secure and safe manner. And the interesting thing was, we had that. We had just done an update to solve that based on the vendor's solution. So it's ironic that we still had that exploit occur, but zero impact, knocking on wood, obviously, for that. Well, I guess one final thought before we go over just rehashing some of our data, because you said it, right? You said that malicious actor was present in the environment for 300 days before that happened. Well, we know, right, based on industry data, that the average malicious actor is present in an environment 287 days before they're identified. So that one went on a little bit longer. And it's all of those things that compel us to create this structured approach to cybersecurity 1 through 21 to make sure that that sort of thing is not happening. And if you look at episode 2 as an example of dark web monitoring, right? If we know credentials are compromised the moment that they're showing up on the dark web, we can be doing things to reset those passwords. So they can try to be in there for 387 days, but it's going to be pointless because the passwords changed. So there's a method to all this crazy madness, and we thank you all for listening. And Jay, great contributions and great partnership. Thank you. So Lauren, let's hear from Jason about Datto. What is, who is Datto, and what does he do at Datto? And then we'll jump into round 2 of talking about what we're doing specifically to solve this problem for clients.
Yeah, so awesome. So once again, Jason Price, Channel Development Manager at Datto. My job, my role is to not only educate our partners, such as you guys over at TechOnPurpose, but also educate their clients and their prospects and their end users, because we need everybody to be on board with what's happening in terms of this technology landscape, right? It's always changing, it's always evolving. And, our job is just to make sure that everybody's making good decisions on a daily basis that's going to make sure that their cybersecurity integrity is good. I've been at Datto for about going on 8 years now. Came here from actually Geek Squad, so you were probably talking to one of my my agents back in the day, and they're the ones who give you the bad news.
Yeah, y'all made me cry.
So I'm sorry. I do apologize about that.
Well, I made myself cry. So.
Right.
But hopefully we gave you a shoulder to cry on, right? And so that's all that matters, right? At the end of the day, that we were there to support you in that moment. And I went from there to join the support organization at Datto. Was in the support organization for a couple of years, and then moved into more of the sales-driven role, and then more into the role I'm in now, where it's more so education, more so just letting people know what's out there. Unfortunately, Jay keeps one-upping me because I do not have a CISPP, SP, wherever it's called. So I'll be working on that. So next time on this call, I can hopefully show him up. But I'm just happy to be here. In terms of Datto, what we do is we are a company that really provides tons of different tools for service providers to be able to not only protect their clients' networks and infrastructure, but also be able to help with efficiencies within those organizations as well. We are a company that was founded in 2007 in Norwalk, Connecticut. So one of the most inconspicuous places for a big tech startup to start. And fast forward a couple of years later, we have over 2,000 employees worldwide. We have over 24 offices around the world. We have US-based support. So anytime that there's any sort of issue or anything of that nature, we want to make sure that we're able to communicate with you, and there's no sort of barriers that are in the way of making us take care or helping us to take care of you. But yeah, that's who I am, and that's who Datto is.
Awesome. Well, Lauren, where do you want to go from here? Do we want to talk about the issue, or have we already done that? You tell me.
Does anybody feel like they have any more to add about the issue?
I'll talk a little bit more about the issue quickly. Yeah. So one of the, I mean, when it comes to protecting your data, people are getting more on board with, okay, yes, I need to make sure that all my data on the servers are good, but there's data in the workstation is good. Even my data on my iPhone is being backed up. One of the things that people are just now kind of realizing is that they need to make sure that their SaaS data, as it pertains to like Microsoft Office or Google Workspace, that data is also being backed up in a secure environment, and in the need that something is compromised, whether it be, as you stated before, ransomware or something like accidental deletion or intentional deletion, that data is there for you to retrieve and be utilized in a quick fashion. So I think it's really important to understand that when you look at like Microsoft and you look at Google, right, we think that these companies are just impenetrable, right? They have iron gates, right? But these companies, they operate on what's called a shared responsibility model. So as it pertains to the data that you have in your Outlook or your OneDrive and things of that nature, they're going to make sure that their infrastructure is up to par, right? They're going to make sure that they have enough servers, the workload is distributed evenly. They're going to make sure that they have levels of redundancy from a power standpoint. They're going to make sure that the facilities are cooled correctly. All of those things are things that they are going to make sure happens. The thing that you have to make sure that is good is that you have to make sure that the data that's in there is secure, right? And so if something happens where you get ransomware, unfortunately, that's a you problem. That's not a Microsoft problem. If something happened where there's a connectivity issue, right, that's a Microsoft problem, but it does impact you, right, because you can't get access to your data, right? And so you have to just keep that in mind that these companies aren't bulletproof. These companies actually recommend that you have a third-party backup solution to make sure that you are taking care of your data and having it securely in another location.
I'm going to add that because Jason's absolutely right. I mean, that shared responsibility is a challenge that when business owners, small business owners, medium business owners, even enterprise, they buy something from Microsoft, well, doesn't Microsoft back it up?
Right.
Isn't that their job? And they don't realize until it's too late that wasn't the case. But now let me pivot a little bit. Let's make sure we frame this conversation well. So when we think of backups, there's actually 3 areas that we have to talk about in the conversation. The first one is a philosophy, and it's called 3-2-1. I want at least 3 copies of my data in at least 2 locations, plus I want 1 offline. Okay, so a local copy where you can run locally, using data products and the Acronis products, other products are out there are fantastic. And then they've got a cloud option where you can run it in the cloud and you can back up the cloud. But the security guy in me is like, remember when, maybe I'm dating myself here now too, Lauren. Remember when we used to have tape drives? And okay, Matt, you might know this. We would put a process in place where the client would take a tape home every Friday. Now, sometimes they went to the bank and put them in a safety deposit box, which was good. Most of the time they got left in a box in the trunk of a car and hopefully never got stolen. But that offline copy helps you prevent against a cyber intruder getting to your backups and encrypting them, like happened with that law firm I mentioned. It also helps you in the event of a fire, a flood, or some sort of other natural disaster, where you've always got one more option to bring data back. Maybe it's not every single day or every 15 minutes where you're backing it up. Maybe it's once a month you take that off site. So 3-2-1 has to become part of our terminology and the way that we work with our conversations. The next thing we look at backups, and Jason probably could speak better to this than I will, but the concept is simple. It's RTO and RPO.
Yes.
So RTO is recovery time objective. How long will it take and how long is the business willing to wait to have their data restored? Obviously, a local copy, you can probably restore back faster than a cloud copy, probably faster than an offline copy. Like, there's things that have to happen to make all those function. The people and the processes have to execute well. But understanding, hey, look, if we're down for 4 hours, my business will be okay. I don't want to be down for 4 hours, but I can live with that. Some businesses will tell you, hey, if I only have to go back a week, that's fine. Mm-hmm. And your cost for managing recovery time is baked into those pricing in a SaaS solution. Mm-hmm. The other side of the coin is what we call RPO, the recovery point objective. How old can the data be? See, it might be that I can wait 2 days to get my data, as long as when you bring it back, it's within 15 minutes of that outage. Mm-hmm. Or it might be, hey, I need you to get it back faster, but if it's 6 hours old, that's going to be okay. I can reload some invoices and process that data. And every business is different. And they have to measure and assess that risk and really kind of sit back in that chair and think about, how many users in our company wouldn't be able to function. Mm-hmm. And we always know sales can still jump on calls on their cell phones, so they'll be okay. But everybody else, we have to worry about. And is that production line going to be an issue? Can I deliver food orders in the restaurant? Right? If I'm a bank, how am I going to process transactions? Am I going to close the branch until they're back online? I mean, what do these things look like for you? So 3-2-1 philosophy, recovery point objective and recovery time objectives are relevant when you're looking at any type of backup planning.
I would add one thing to that, right? So when you talk about RTO and RPO, I like to think about it as a measure of your threshold for pain.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you have a good, if you have a good threshold for pain, you can be further away from, the having that immediate result, right? Having a 15-minute old backup and having the ability to be up and running, within 15 minutes. If you have a low threshold of pain, man, you're typically going to have to invest more into the solution to make sure that you can get back in a reasonable amount of time, essentially.
This is awesome. And this is why we have a diverse cast, guys. And if you come back to it, there's your CISSP answer, right? RTO and RPO. I'm going to throw some acronyms at you. And the reality is the diversity of our team. You nailed it. What's your pain threshold? Because that's what those two things basically tell you. I love that. Absolutely.
And then finish it, Matt, because you talk about assessments.
Yeah.
During the assessment process is really to help establish what the risk tolerance is.
That's right.
And every business is different.
Absolutely.
I mean, look, I might be willing to forego a few days of the data, but it doesn't hurt me as a CEO.
Right.
But your team might be like, that'd be horrible, right? So you're going to go find those things out in the process. Absolutely. And when you can establish risk tolerance for data loss, everything else in building out a SaaS plan is easy.
Well, and if you think about it, we haven't even begun to scratch the surface on the considerations that can of worms just opened that you have to go through. And the reality is, if you're that small tax office or some other company, you don't want to learn these new acronyms. You don't have it. And that's what TechOnPurpose is here for, guys, because we're going to guide you and get you simply to where your data is protected, it's recoverable. I want us to, when we come back around in round two, I want us to talk about the importance of retention periods, because that was an important part of what you did, right? When you were talking about your compromise, they didn't have more than 90 days. One of the things I love about our friends at Datto is they have an infinite cloud retention plan, and they're doing multiple backups multiple times a day of this cloud data. And we have nice acronyms for all of those things as well. But the reality, what that translates to is we can mitigate your pain threshold by making sure that we have multiple copies available for an infinite period of time so that we can get you back to that point. So, man, what a great conversation. A smaller group works well, Lauren.
I know, this is great.
This is good stuff. Well, so we've talked a little bit about the issue. Let's talk about some very specific solutions. And I say, let's talk about the Datto solution and your approach to providing this level of security that we're talking about, this level of recoverability. What's Datto doing about that?
So we're doing so much things. So just to give a little backstory, right? So the first product that we ever launched was a continuity solution, right? The ability to back up your on-premise data to a Datto device or an appliance that lives on-premise, and then be able to take that data and actually send it to the cloud. And that goes to what Jay was talking about, and having data in multiple locations, part of the 3-2-1 rule. We've evolved to not only be able to do that and do it very well, but to also be able to offer backup of like that Microsoft and Google SaaS data. And it's important to know that the number one attack vector, right, is Microsoft. Is Microsoft's Microsoft. I'm sorry, they just changed the name to Microsoft. It's not 365 anymore, but it's Microsoft.
Yeah, it is. It's actually, they went from Office 365 to
Office,
Microsoft.
yes. All right, there we go.
There.
All right.
Keep me guessing.
Yeah, so it is like the number one attack vector, right? So we look at like the amount of like phishing attempts and scams, because that nature, like 89% come through like your email. So it's something that you want to make sure that not only you are securing, we do have products that help secure that environment, but more importantly, to be able to back it up, right? So securing it is always going to be first, right? You always want to do that first, right? Backup is always a thing you don't want to have to go to, but you have it if you need it, right? So there's different layers of protection that you need to make sure that you're going to be safe and protected. But I think what we do well is not only the security side, but in terms of being able to back up that data, right? We're backing it up multiple times a day. It's going to our own private data center. So that's always going to be a plus, right? Something happens to Microsoft's data center. Guess what? you're in luck. We still have all your data. It's still accessible. It's still recoverable. You can still do exports or imports into other data centers. There's so much things that you can do with it. And, you know, I think it's important because, you know, you think about how much business interactions, projects, things of that nature happen through Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace, right? A tremendous amount. And if you take a look at where we were prior to COVID versus post-COVID, or I shouldn't say post-COVID because it just it's like I jinx it every single time I say that, right? So when we take a look at when we take a look at like when COVID first started, there was like a 700% increase in the amount of people that were going to Microsoft 365, right? 700%, right? Because everybody now had to work remotely. They had to work, you know, from home. There's different ways that they needed to figure out how to communicate with one another, whether it be utilizing like Teams or, you know, something of that nature, different SharePoint, connections that are happening. I mean, all these different things came into play, and all of a sudden you have everybody really just filling into this room that had that growth potential, and it was supposed to grow over the next 5 years, but that seemed to have happened in 6 months, right? And so it's more important now than ever to really make sure that that data is being protected in those environments. I remember when we first launched this product through an acquisition. This was about 5 years ago. We acquired a company named Backupify. And, you know, the CEO at the time must have been so forward thinking, because inside, you know, we were like, yo, this is stupid. Like, who needs to back up Microsoft data? Who needs to back up that? Like, it just seemed like a stupid thing. We didn't say that publicly. We didn't say that out loud. And the CEO never heard us say that, right? But as we've seen over the last 5 years, the need for that has increased significantly, right? And so, you know, it's awesome that we're able to offer this product and give people that peace of mind to know that their data is safe and protected and can easily be accessed in the event of an emergency.
So we've kicked this around the room a couple of times, and we haven't really drawn the lines of delineation, and I'm going to provide a little bit of focus for our conversation and perspective to a coming episode, right? We've kind of broken back up down in our top Cyber 21 into 2 areas, right? And today we're talking about Cloud SaaS Backup primarily. And what's awesome is you're getting a little bit of a teaser on what's coming down the pipe as we start talking about server backups and BCDR, because that's a critical component, right? So let's continue to feed that conversation to come, and let's try to focus on the cloud side of things today. What's awesome about this is that I don't know that we have a client today that doesn't use Google or Office 365 as a rule, right? And I'll tell you that for all the right reasons, we don't sell that service without a backup like the ones we're talking about here today for all the right reasons. I literally just came from a lunch appointment with a tax accounting firm. They're using a website hosted email to pop. I think that's a scary word, pop. And I'm like, and they wanted to talk to me about cloud storage. And that was my first question is, what do you use for email? And this is the answer. And I go, well, we've got a quick fix for you. And you know what I love too, encryption. It's worth saying things about encryption. One thing to keep in mind about these cloud backups is they're able to be encrypted in such a manner that Datto can't see that that information. I, as your managed service provider, I can't see that information, and only you can. And hopefully you have that decryption key someplace real safe that it doesn't get lost. And that's important, right? I had this guy ask me today. He says, "Hey, can someone come to me? Can a court come to me and subpoena Microsoft and get copies of my data?" Because apparently he's seen where that happened at Google. Great question. I said, I actually don't know the answer to that. I do know my backup data they couldn't do that with, but I'll go get you an answer. So yeah, cloud backup, guys, it's got to happen. Everybody's using Google. Everybody's using Microsoft. I'm sure there are some other forms of backup that we should potentially talk about as well from the cloud, right, guys? But those are the 2 key ones.
You know, Matt, I'll kind of pile on what Jason was saying. Again, another war story from just a few weeks ago. Partner got an email from a client on a Saturday afternoon, and the attachment in the email said it was a text document that opened up on his desktop. It basically was one of the attack groups telling him exactly what they did, and they didn't encrypt anything. There was no ransomware. They basically said, though, but we've been in your network now for weeks, and we've stolen 350 gigs of data from your Microsoft cloud. And they did it using last week's content, they phished a user who gave them their credentials that didn't have multi-factor authentication turned on. And literally the partner was looking at the firewalls in their business. There was no stealing 350 gigs of data. You'd see it in the firewall. Well, when we look at the logs, it's because they logged into Microsoft's portal directly and downloaded it right from Microsoft to themselves, and they presented copies of files. Yeah. I mean, they could have just said, delete all, and killed it all.
What was the point of them doing that? Like, oh, make sure you do better next time. Like, what was
extortion?
Yeah.
Okay.
They literally said, we're going to share all of these files out to the world unless you pay us.
Okay, that's what I thought, but then you skipped that part, and I was like,
yeah, here's a crazy
friendly
part.
Reminder.
In this letter, there was frequently asked questions, so that the person receiving this would know exactly. They're having a conversation. Why would you do this? Money. How did you do it? Well, we'll tell you, but not until you pay us. Matter of fact, once you pay us, we will show you the risk assessment that we ran to show you where all of your vulnerabilities were. Wow. So that we can help you close those down. So future threat actors won't be able to leverage that same hole that we came in from.
Wow.
So essentially they're doing the same thing that TechOnPurpose does, but they charge you like 100 times more.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I've got the whole email. It makes you sick. Yeah. But at times you almost have to laugh because these guys have heard all the objections. So what if I don't pay? Well, we're going to do this. And that's who we're dealing with in this world today, is some people that do not care about your data, but they know that you care about it. Right? So whether you're trying to secure this space or implement your SaaS backups, right? You have to get this right. You can no longer put it behind you. And we can kind of wrap this up with legislation. This Log4j, vulnerability that's existed. You're now seeing governments saying that businesses that now fall victim to an attack from this attack that should have already known to fix it and didn't should be held accountable. That's a whole new level of risk management for a business owner that you can solve for with the right SaaS platform. And of course, here at ConnectWise, we have our own platform that some of our partners use, but we've partnered with some of the best in the industry, to allow partners like Matt to be able to use those. I know you guys are using Acronis, and we're big fans of what Acronis has done in the backup world and how they've solved these challenges. They're all good. The issue is that when you do your assessment, to everybody who's on listening today and reads this later on, you've got to look at this again from all the different angles, and we've only covered a few. I mean, Jason and I could probably go on for another hour just calling out other things to think about. But Matt, they're on your checklist. There are things that you do with your clients every day of the week, and so why don't you tell us about that?
Wow, which part?
Yes,
that's such a can of worms, right?
Yeah.
Well,
SaaS backups. How are you solving it for your clients?
It's pretty simple, and I've implied it once, and hopefully I'll do a better job this time around, right? So the reality is everything starts with the risk assessment, and unfortunately, here we are offering this invaluable free thing to people, and more often than not, they're coming to us asking us to solve a single problem. In this case, like the story I told a moment ago, the guy just wanted cloud storage. Well, it turns out he's got all kinds of issues. He doesn't use complex passwords. He doesn't use MFA, and he's using web pop mail hosted stuff, right? But as you heard me say earlier, we don't provide, I think easily 99% of our clients use Google or Microsoft, right? Anybody that's not using one of those two things is probably not a right kind of client for us because there's so many other issues related to that. And as I said, we don't sell those products without the backup, the cloud backup. It's just not an option. And so I don't know that, Jason, you've heard this, and this might help facilitate the closure of the conversation and a little bit of the origins of this whole campaign that we've created, Who's in Your Cloud. But we had a number of clients that consistently refused to adopt best security practices. We cared about these folks deeply. We see the writing on the wall and they're heading toward devastating disaster. And we have to ask ourselves, do we want to be on that ship when it sinks? And so in a last foray of attempt to educate and motivate, we created this campaign called Who's in Your Cloud for 21 steps, right? And we created what we call a security awareness declaration matrix. And so we're actually requiring all of our clients to sign this declaration that basically says, of the 21 security steps, which of these have you adopted? Do you refuse to adopt? Would you like to adopt effectively? Or you're in the process of adopting it, right? And then there's some fine print. It's just one of our standard terms and conditions. And it basically says, if you consistently refuse to adopt best security practices, guess what? Cloud SaaS Backup is one of those. Then we can fire you as a client at any time because we're going to get off the ship. We don't want to be there when it goes down. We're telling you, your kids, don't touch the hot oven, don't touch the hot oven, don't touch the hot oven. And the kid walks up there and Jason, you got a young one, you'll find out sometimes, right? Hopefully not. And they still want to touch that oven. And you're like, you don't want to see that pain. So the other side of that, by the way, is we tell our clients if they consistently refuse to adopt best security practices, they experience a compromise and want us to remediate it, our rates go up exponentially. So
I think what you're saying is awesome, because I speak to a ton of different people in your position, different MSPs and people who provide these services across the country. And more people are saying, you know what, if they're not willing to take a multi-layered approach to protecting their environment, we don't want them as a customer, right?
Nope.
It's not about the money at this point, but I want to be able to sleep at night, and I want my techs to be able to sleep at night. And I don't want to work. You're supposed to be partners, right? And
That's
so
right.
If you're making certain recommendations, right, they really need to be truly considered, right? And if there's questions, there's always going to be questions, right? Well, why do I need this? Or can't I get away with this, that, the other? And that's normal. But at the end of the day, you guys are the professionals. I see you guys at different events, learning about the new solutions, learning about the new processes and procedures out there, new legislation coming down. So you guys are the most educated people in the room. So hopefully they take heed to like these, these pieces of advice that you're giving, because it's not saying it from a standpoint of just wanting to sell you more, but really how to really protect you and have everybody have a good night's sleep.
And we've said from the beginning, we wish you didn't have to do any of this.
Yeah,
we'd love to do something more for you from an IT perspective, and it's no longer an option. And Jay, I think you'll appreciate this, right? So we use your Identify platform to create these risk assessments, and they make these beautiful reports, which, by the way, are invaluable to your insurance company, who's going to be coming back and asking you all of those same questions, and you'll already have those questions answered, and didn't cost you thousands of dollars. What's interesting is that report, what we find is the typical business owner gets it, and now they have intelligence, but they don't know how to decipher that intelligence. Like, we're telling them what their most critical and high and medium risk things are, and here's the recommended remediation steps. It's full of acronyms that they don't understand, and RTO and RPO, and where do you go with that? Well, that's where our Top Cyber 21 matrix comes in. We literally hand this thing to them, very intentionally built. How do I get started in securing my environment? What's the simplest thing you can do? Top Cyber Step 21, get your people trained. It's inexpensive, right? Let's monitor the dark web to make sure that we don't have compromised credentials. Let's make sure that we're using complex passwords and password managers everywhere, including MFA and identity access management. And we're going to get there, and hopefully they're starting with Cloud SaaS Backup as on the front end.
Matt, we talk about this a lot, is that the business community automatically assumes that security is going to be expensive. And what I tell them is that, look, it can be, and for some businesses it needs to be, but the first impact on your business is not going to be money. It's going to be sacrificing convenience. Right? Having to get a code from a phone. You can't see my phone, I guess there it is. Two-factor authentication, not being able to reuse the same password over and over again. Can't store my passwords in the browser. I got to use a password manager. All these things have nominal costs associated with them, but they do require you sacrifice convenience. And so when you're willing to say, okay, I'll have that conversation with you, and you really assess, then that's where you start to understand what this roadmap looks like. And we talk about action plans, right? We don't have to do everything tomorrow.
Nope.
But let's put the next 90 and 180 days onto a roadmap, and let's roll these things out that you should have based on what we learned from your assessment, so that you're not the slowest kid in the woods when the bear is chasing you. That's what it boils down to, right? Get rid of the easy stuff, because look, even the White House can get attacked. We want to make sure that we've got the right controls in place, including those SaaS backups, so that you can survive an attack or an outage, a fire, a flood, or whatever that might look like in your business.
Or an employee who just clicks on anything. Right?
Oh, don't even get me started there, Jason. We got stories there. Got click happy colleagues.
You reminded me of something, Jay. I'll have to tell my story sometime about Microsoft Mail 1.0 and how I figured out how to actually hack email addresses to send an email from anybody to anybody. And to prove it, I sent something to @whitehouse.gov, and my phone rang a little bit later, by the way. And it turns out I actually had a buddy that worked at the White House that cleared me real quickly. This guy was just doing a test, but it's a funny story. And it tells you how far the vulnerabilities have actually, and the security has actually evolved, because theoretically we can't do that very well anymore. We're spoofing email in that way, if you will. Cloud SaaS Backup, guys. It's not an option like most of the security things out there. If you're willing to say, I'm not going to compromise on and use password managers, and I'm not going to back these things up, you're saying you're okay being out of business. How long can you be out of business? That's the RTO, the RPO conversation. If any of this didn't make sense and you have questions, please reach back to a member of our team. I think Lauren's going to give you some instructions on our way out here of how to get some free trials of all of these technologies that we're talking about. And so any final thoughts, guys, on how we can motivate the team about the urgency of this issue and how to get started? Jay.
Just start with the assessment. Again, what we don't know can hurt us. And the assessment will help you start to get visibility into what you need to consider. Doesn't mean you're going to do everything in the world, but you're going to align really well towards the top 21, because they actually make sense. That they're practical, they're implementable, and they're reasonably affordable when you start looking at the cost of outage.
I think I'm right on board, and today it seems like I'm copying everything Jay says, but guy is smart and he's just saying some valuable stuff. But definitely making sure that you go through like a checklist that you guys do to pretty much highlight the risk and then just take action off of that, right? And it's your job to educate them, because once again there's going to be tons of questions. Like, I've never seen that much red on a paper before, right? And it's and it's your job to be like, okay, we see it all the time, but this is the steps that we can get you. These are the steps that we can take to get you to a better place, right? It's at the end of the day, it's all about just getting to a better place. And always striving to continue to go there, because guess what? When you think you're at that final destination, right? The criminals come out with something even better and heinous and crazier, and you're gonna have to keep moving, right? So it's a journey that doesn't stop, right? But you always want to be ahead of the class, right? For lack of a better term.
Yeah. So Lauren, I'm gonna let you close this out. I'm gonna put a fine point on this whole thing. With some facts that might be useful to our listening audience. As Jay said, this stuff is not that expensive. I want to tell you how simple it is and how quick it is. I don't care if you have 5 mailboxes or you have 500 mailboxes. I don't care if it's Google. I don't care if it's Microsoft 365. It's important to point out that these SaaS backup solutions that we're working with don't just back up your email. They back up your SharePoint sites. They back up your Google Drive. They back up your OneDrive. So it's a comprehensive backup, and it literally takes less than 24 hours from the time that you decide I'm going to be smart enough to back up my data for us to be backing up all that data 3 times a day and keep infinite copies of it online. We're looking forward to seeing your requests to learn more and get you signed up for this level of security. Lauren, if you don't mind, close this out.
Yeah, of course.
Help folks how to plug in more.
All right. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the halfway point in our series as we round out topic number 10 of our 21 steps to secure, reliable, trusted technology. I wanted to remind our audience that losing critical data affects organizations of all size. I think that Jason touched on it earlier with Microsoft, but in 2009, Microsoft and T-Mobile nearly lost all of their customers' data due to a failure of the Microsoft server computer. And even Pixar accidentally lost 90% of Toy Story 2 to an errant computer demand. So it happens to everybody, but don't let it happen to you.
Right.
So next week, we'll be discussing how the demand for encrypted email grows daily and why encryption tools are vital to business sustainability. And we talked about it a little bit today, but next week we will dive deeper. So catch up on all episodes on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Spotify, and get direct delivery to your inbox by signing up at TechOnPurpose.net/blog. And if you would like to start a free trial from any of our partners here today, send an email to freetrial@who'sinyour.cloud. And we've said it over and over again today, but to get your free cybersecurity risk assessment, visit who'sinyour.cloud today. All right, that is all for us today. Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, gentlemen.